3, 2, 1, and we are back. Julie is just threatening that if I go on some long rant today, she's not going to stick it out for the whole podcast.
That's right. Actually, I have something that's kind of funny that a coaching client sent me. That I guess I would put on the list of things I hate, but we can save that up for later. It is funny, though.
Well, we need to do our warning, right?
Warning, yes.
Warning. This is the Sunday podcast. This is not our normal podcast. On Sunday, we will talk about whatever comes to our mind in whatever sort of random order in which it comes into our mind. There is no agenda, no checklist, no points. And there should be no notes to take. This is just you guys having a conversation with Julie and I as we sit around on our beach close villa here in Puerto Rico. And we defrag from the prior week and we sort of put our thoughts together about what we're looking forward to the week to come. So
yes.
then you have,
good
would
warning.
you like, yeah, that's your warning. So it's totally random. That's what we're saying. And we should just call it The Random Show, but somebody else already has a good podcast called that, so I didn't want to steal that name. But that is what Sunday is for us. And so hopefully you guys, well, I know you do because a lot of you actually are listening on Sunday about the normal peak day for us, which is actually on a Wednesday. You know, there is something actually I was thinking about talking about today. I'll just talk about it. It's not much of a rant. It won't last. I was thinking about why everyone doesn't start their own podcasts. And I was thinking, like, that's such a no-brainer thing to do nowadays as far as disseminating information, you know.
Sure.
If you think about, like, how hard it is, if you wanted to, everyone needs to produce, you have to obviously do proactive lead generation. Mm-hmm. You have to do things like that. And, you know, if you just do that as a real estate practitioner, frankly, if all you do is proactive lead generation and you never do anything else, you're going to do great. You don't have to really do anything else.
But you have to keep that focus that is your number one job and not get distracted by the 5 million things that are trying to get you off track.
Right. So now, why is that related to podcasting? Well, it isn't really. The reason I'm telling you this is because I'm not going to tell you that podcasting or anything else passive is going to replace real work of real estate, which is proactive lead generation. You know, we've never, just to put a period at the end of that sentence, you can definitely sell a lot of houses without ever doing proactive lead generation, but you won't make any real money. No, don't get me wrong. You might have great revenue, but you're not going to make any profit. And so that's the reason ultimately, after coaching agents for a couple decades, that we refuse to even come close to, misleading you guys that there is a shortcut to ever, lasting long-term levels of success in real estate and everything else in life, other than just being proactive. Being passive at anything in life will result in, either utter or some resemblance of failure. So with that in mind, just listen to last week's podcast. And the week before that, we were really drilling down and helping you guys kind of cut through the Mickey Mouse that is so prolific in essentially real estate education nowadays about doing things passively for lead generation. So we're not going to talk about that because that would be a first-class level 5 rant.
Okay. And stay tuned for that later in the week.
No, I don't want to do that. I need a break from that on Sunday.
We need a break too.
But with that said, everyone listening really should start a podcast. And I'll tell you, ultimately, the reason you should start a podcast is because if nothing else, it is a really interesting way to meet and connect with people. And a podcast gives you permission, if you do it right, in my opinion, to just do like we're doing it today, where we're just being unfettered. We're just having a conversation. And it does. And here's what's fascinating about podcasting in general. If you look at all the different podcast topics there are out there, and there's just billions of things that people will do shows about, mostly things that interest them. And sure enough, if there's something that interests you, chances are there's other people just as weird as you. They might be in some corner of the world someplace that are also interested in whatever the hell it is you're interested in. And the next thing you know, you start forming a community and you start having these relationships. You could have done that with hypothetically on social networking sites and whatnot. You could form relationships that way. But something about podcasting is so pure. And I think it's because no one's really figured out, well, this is the reason. No one's really figured out how to monetize it yet. So podcasters,
it's not polluted yet.
Right? It's not polluted exactly. I think Joe Rogan's selling to Spotify. We might see the first step of the slippery slope, but the big money hasn't entered into podcasting, and it hasn't essentially made it so that people's opinions are so persuaded by their advertisers at the end of the day, or what they say is an attempt to get advertisers. And you see a lot of that on that's just media in general. They have bills to pay, right? But on podcasting, it's still in this sort of, I don't know, this pure sense where people are just doing it for the sake of doing it.
Yeah.
That's art
Yeah,
for the
I
sake of
think
doing the art, opposed to
yes.
trying to do it for the sake of selling it.
It's more pure that way, I think. And
Yeah.
you can be much more targeted. You probably listen to twice as many podcasts as I do, but I really like. There's different ways to use a podcast, right? There's like educational, there's entertainment, there's motivation. You can seek out and be targeted. We talk a lot, like in the Harris Rules book and on coaching calls, about controlling what goes into your head. Well, you can really use podcasts to hone that in.
Right.
And do just a way better job than if you do any other type of media.
Well, so you and I are still selling real estate. We're in Central Ohio. We're in New Albany, Ohio, and we're selling this beautiful area, where we used to live, New Albany Country Club area. Mm-hmm. Still one of the most, I don't even know, maybe the most beautiful neighborhood in all of the Americas that we've ever been into.
Yeah, I think we appreciate it more now that we don't live there, but yes.
Yeah, but it's spectacular.
Definitely spectacular.
Yeah. It's more, like if you guys are ever in Columbus, Ohio, drive through the New Albany Country Club area, you just, you're thinking I'm exaggerating, not even close to exaggerating. But anyway, so if we are still living there, I would have us do a podcast, just talk about living there. That's it. And
yeah,
I would call it, Life in New Albany or something.
Yeah.
Right? And I would talk about the things that are going on. I wouldn't make it I wouldn't give them the sports scores, and it wouldn't be like some sort of, homegrown AM station. I wouldn't do it that way.
No, but it's more of a community-based kind of
Not
fun,
even, honestly, I wouldn't.
What are you doing and who are you seeing?
That's the whole community-based thing is so overdone. There's so many people that disseminate information like that. You just think, Julie, local newspaper.
Well, I didn't mean it like that. I meant like, what's happening and maybe something that you went to that was fun in the community, and
exactly.
making it more familial in a way.
Yes, exactly. But I would be even more selfish, to be honest. Like, what?
Have a discussion.
I would take this podcast, this Sunday podcast that we do, and our regular listenership. We have tens of thousands of listeners. Mm-hmm. We have there's two cool things I want to tell you. Don't let me forget two cool things I want to tell you. We have this is the number one listened to daily podcast in at least the United States. Mm-hmm. So in our podcast during the week, it's a lot of listens because people like the more sort of, institutionalized, professional, educational coaching that we do. Mm-hmm. Whereas on Sunday, it's just you and I, being you and I for the most part.
Unplugged.
Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. For the most part.
Yeah.
We're 90% unplugged on this podcast. Yeah. But the fear that people have starting podcasts is that they have to do it like we do it during the week. Mm. And I'll be honest with you guys don't have, probably most of you will never have the opportunity, and this sounds terrible, but to be as good as we are during the week, because Julie and I have presented that information for so long and done so many coaching calls. And what we're essentially doing on our weekly podcast is we're taking the coalescence of the coaching calls that we've done, and Julie and I have done at least 100,000 one-on-one coaching calls each.
The calls, the books, the events, everything.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is to, like, if you guys, and here's where I can see where someone would listen to our normal podcast and they'd say, well, crap, I can't string my thoughts together like that. I can't, I don't want to have to take the time and figure out 7 points that are this or 10, 3, mm-hmm. or, I get it. And I wouldn't either. And if I were in your position, listeners, and I had not been done what Julie and I've, done for the past forever, I heard that podcast and I'd think to myself, well, I can't replicate that because I couldn't do it in such a way that it would be listenable. But where you can do it is you can do it like we do it on Sunday, like today, where we're just talking. And I think that's ultimately what people would really like. So, for example, if you did a podcast, and that's the other thing is people get overwhelmed by the production quality of it.
I think people get intimidated and think that they've got to have like a sound engineer and
right,
they've got to have an editor and all this, and you really don't. In fact, I think people really enjoy it a lot more when you are authentic and maybe like, I'm sure we're going to have some green parrots fly over soon.
Yeah, exactly.
But you don't have to overthink it. And I think that a lot of people just get intimidated by what they perceive to be the process.
That's what I'm saying. And you don't have to do anything. And there's so many, I'll give you guys a list of audio bursts. Write that down. Audioburst.com, I believe. They're out of Australia. Or no, they're out of Israel. And with just you go research it yourselves. I don't need to tell you. Write down Podbean. Might be Podbeam. No, it's Podbean. So write that down. PODBEAN.com. That's who we syndicate our podcast through. I don't necessarily. I know we have an intro. I know we have an exit on our podcast, but honestly, you don't even really need one anymore. Most podcasts I listen to, it's just, Joe Rogan's, for example. This is the most popular in the world, and he's got, He sold it to Spotify for $100 million. He's got no, real lead in or lead out. It's just something very to the point.
Yeah.
You don't have to push your podcasts onto YouTube, make them into videos. But if you do, most of the major podcasters, they use a company like AudioBurst, who then makes your podcast into a video, and you don't even have to do that. And it's super cheap and it's automated. So these are all the just different little widgets. As far as like, let me tell you the software that we're using that we really don't even have to do anything for. So Julie and I record our podcast every day. You guys won't believe this. We record it directly into my iPhone. And then I take my iPhone and I load the audio file right up into Podbean. That's how it works. That's how simple it works. And guys, write this down. Julie and I we have a full-blown podcasting situation with microphones and a mixing board and all that. But honestly, we hardly ever use it. It's sitting there collecting dust. I'm honestly embarrassed to look at it, all the pain in the ass, the money that went into putting it together. We'll get back to it. Yeah, we'll get back to it. Maybe.
It's on the list, I know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'm always thinking of another. Well, it's because it's such a hassle, and truthfully, the audio quality from what we're using is still good.
It's not radically different.
So, guys, here it is. The mics that Julie and I use. Write this down. They're just little lavalier, directional mics, and that's what they are. They're lavaliers. We're holding a couple lavaliers, and that it's a Rode RODE SC6-L, and then this thing. Yep, that's what I'm using. And then we have a couple Rode lavaliers, and I know you guys are going to want to know the software we're using, and I'm going to try to find out without screwing up this recording. All right, here it is. It's Ferrite, Ferrite. And see, here's how this works. Literally, I plug the Rode thing with the two lavaliers plugged into the Rode thing into the iPhone, and I got the Ferrite software loaded, and I hit record, and the thing records, and then after it's done recording, I then can basically tell it where to upload it to. I can upload it directly to Podbean, and then and after that, everything's done. Podbean then publishes your show. Some of the Spotify and Audible, you have to apply. It doesn't happen automatically, but virtually everybody else, Podbean will take your podcast and they'll push it, load it up to iTunes, and then it automatically will load up to about 5 or 6 different podcasting places. So what I'm saying is you don't have to do all the Mickey Mouse technical stuff. It's all totally automated. And then you can add to, like I said, Audible, and you can add Spotify, and there's a few others too you can add to. I think we're syndicating now on maybe 20, maybe 25 different platforms, which is really cool. But what I'm trying to convince you guys of is you don't need to worry about overly producing it. You don't need to worry about your content being too fancy. You don't need to worry about intros and exits. You don't need to worry about anything. Matter of fact, you don't even need to worry about listeners. You don't even need to worry about how many people are paying attention. Just do it to start, just for fun. And you can do it by yourself. You don't have to have a partner. You could do interview style. Interview style is probably the most popular. We don't do more interviews, frankly, because they're a pain in the butt to organize, and a lot of the people that want to be interviewed are also trying to sell you guys something, and I don't want to have to, I want to keep what we're doing pure. I don't want to have competing messages or somebody's product on. I'll give you guys an example. It was 4 years ago. We had a product called, I won't even tell the name of it. And the guy was saying some stuff on this interview, and this interview was set up through his publicist, or I don't remember who. And he was saying some stuff that was some straight up BS, and I knew it, and I obviously didn't let it get by me. Well, after that, they were so mad, and so it's like, oh my gosh, so really someone's going to come on here, and I'm supposed to just shut up and let them lie to my listeners? Not going to happen. So it's very hard to find really good podcast guests. Our favorite interviews when we do them are definitely with the superstar agents out there, which we're going to certainly do more of. But anyway, in conclusion, I would strongly suggest all of you guys start doing a podcast, because podcasting is going to start, and already has started, becoming, it's the largest thing in terms of the dissemination of information. What I mean by that is there's more people running to podcasts to get their information than any other source of information since the Gutenberg press. In other words, there's not been an increase this rapid in people consuming information through a relatively new medium since the advent of the mass-produced newspaper. You guys getting what I'm saying here? So those of you who have overinvested in video and all that ship has sailed, and so you need to seriously consider doing podcasting. And I think you'll discover that after a while, the benefits from all the audio and all the content you've pushed out there will start to reinforce your normal messaging and actually might create some new opportunities and paths forward for you that you may not have ever considered.
Yeah, well, what a great, unique selling proposition for an agent if somebody's searching or deciding and your podcast comes up. I think most people are pretty impressed by that. I mean, it at least makes you different.
Well, you were saying that. I was just thinking about a podcast I was listening to. There's this podcast I listened to. It was only like 20 minutes long. Mm-hmm. It's done by, I'm a collector car nerd, right? Certain kinds of cars, they're my hobby. I'm not doing a lot of it anymore, but because we live in Puerto Rico, but I still can listen and read about them, right? So there's this guy named Greg Stanley that has this podcast, like I said, 15, 20 minutes long, and he is he works for RM Sotheby's Auctions, and he is a guy whose job in essence is to go out and find inventory for RM to auction off. So it's sort of like a listing agent goes out and finds houses. So this guy's job is to basically go out and find listings, and then he gets, I'm sure, a commission on whatever the seller pays, just like a normal, think of it in terms of listing real estate. So his podcast is it's good because all he does is he takes 2 or 3 car collectors type news headlines that maybe had some momentum online, and he'll just talk about those things a little bit, and then he'll do a light pitch saying, "Hey, listen, if you're looking to sell your collector car, let's talk. Maybe I can help you through RM Sotheby's." La da da da. And then sometimes he has guests, but really all it is him talking about some of the experiences he had during the previous week, and then pulling in some headlines that as car nerds like. I mean, I listen to it, and I realize Julie suffers through it sometimes listening to it.
You feel like you're up to date on what's happening in the collector car market, and it's coming from a valued resource that's in it more than you are because it's his job. So, I think that has a lot of value.
It does, but so going back to the idea, if we are still in New Albany and we are selling real estate there, I absolutely would do it, and I'd keep it super informal, and I wouldn't worry about if I was being judged or what people thought. That's what makes it more right. But that's what makes it more authentic is when you have the little foibles and the parrots in the background. That's what makes something more listenable. Okay, now here's the big announcement. Okay. First of all, on Amazon, I believe we now have over 400 5-star reviews in the book.
That's awesome.
Yep. And some of the late but that's the really cool news is now we are having this podcast, or our normal podcast, listened to in over 54 different countries.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I know.
I was thinking, I probably would. I bet you I could name maybe 25 countries, and then I'd have to look at the map or the globe, and that's pretty amazing. That's incredible. So thank you, loyal listeners and new listeners.
And so I think maybe 2 or 3 listeners that might be just some sort of an anomaly. That might be an issue in the code. But we've got 30 listeners, 30, so 33 listeners in
Mongolia, right?
Or something. Yeah, exactly.
Well,
what's going on
away.
there? There must be one broker in Mongolia.
I don't know, but like I said before, I'd like to know who their internet provider is because you don't think of that as let her know, right?
But yes, I mean that's so. When I go through these lists of these countries, I mean maybe 40 through 50, starting around 40 through 54. Then you're looking at single digits. You're looking at 8 downloads or 7 streams or whatever.
Still, it's interesting though.
Yeah, so those might, honestly, like I said, those might be mistakes. But the rest of the others of them in the code, so for those of you who are listening to us all over the world in names of countries where, frankly, we have to look on the globe to see where you are, thank you for listening to us. We really do sincerely appreciate it. I know most of you listen to us for our real estate content, but I've also noticed a lot of you guys are small business owners. They're listening to us because we have a tendency to give you guys no BS, direct tactical information. And this is what the feedback you're giving us as to why you listen. So I really sincerely appreciate it. And yes, keep listening, keep downloading, and we're going to keep what we're doing. And we're going to, obviously always try to improve the content by improving ourselves. To which brings Julie to, I'm sure, some inevitably bizarre series of articles that she was saving up just for Sunday's show.
Okay, so, I do the premiere calls all through the week, which means that I'm hearing from our coaching members all over the country, all over the world, all of what they're going through, they're dealing with, and they're all just, completely in momentum. It's such a strong market right now that they're going through a lot. But one of the games that we play in Premiere is Top That Real Estate Story because it keeps them coming. And many times, it has something to do with prospecting, where they can't believe that this is the person they're working with.
Oh,
After
you mean
having
you have
a
the
call.
students basically?
Yes,
compete
it's
for the
them.
craziest story?
Yeah, because I have my book of stories from our career, which
All right.
I will one day write.
So what's your craziest story? Is this one
Okay.
from Luann?
Yes.
Oh, boy.
And I researched it. Okay, so one of our longtime coaching members and friends and associates, Luann Eichhorn in Texas, she's on the calls quite often, and she hears us play like Top That Real Estate Story. A lot of times it's like, have you ever heard of that happening in an inspection? And I think she wins this week's session because she sent me something. It's called, somebody found it, I guess, in the wood of a house, and it's called bleeding tooth fungus, which, like, you don't even have to see a picture of that to imagine how disgusting it was.
Only in Texas.
Oh, probably. Actually, this was in the Northwest because it's actually a mushroom. This was somebody that she knew from a Facebook page or something.
Oh.
So it wasn't one of her deals. I think in Texas it would have been vaporized by the summer sun.
It had been red wasps flying around with
Right.
in stealth mode. You can't hear or see until they have attacked you.
Until they're on you.
And they breathe
Exactly.
fire. And red wasps in Texas, guys. If
They're
you've
the
never
real
seen,
deal.
if you've never seen a red wasp, okay, it's not like you think it is. It's like you think it is, about 10 times as large,
And way meaner.
and just totally, completely pissed off. And
It's murderous intentions for sure.
and I remember the first time someone, when we moved to the house we had in Texas, and we had this barn we had, which was infested with different kinds of wasps. And the guy that came by to help us basically get the house, livable, he said to us, he goes, the black wasps, when they sting you, that hurts. But he goes, it was Greg. The red wasps, those things will take you out for a week. And I'm like, dude, the damn thing is red. It's 3 times larger than the black ones. Do you think I needed to be told to avoid it?
And they're faster.
How dumb
and
do I look?
They're also attracted to movement, so when you discover
And
one, you
noise.
start flailing, then it's extra exciting.
And noise.
And noise. The
Yeah.
thing more annoying than that, I think, was the red ants, because you could be standing right in them and didn't know that until they were on you.
Yep.
Also, really horrible.
So back to
murders
bleeding tooth fungus.
inside. Yeah, so I'm like, okay. I see a lot of this kind of thing come and go from my email and the calls, so I kind of set it for later. I'm going to research this. Well, first of all, it is just as disgusting as you imagine it. Imagine kind of a misshapen mushroom that's kind of grayish white with actual red dots oozing, like a bloody tooth. I mean, really gross. So I guess this thing is somehow symbiotic with different plants and uses the plant's carbon monoxide or something, and then somehow benefits the plant. It's a symbiotic thing. So then it goes on to talk about how you probably don't want to eat it. Like, really? You have to be... This is like the wasps. Like, you have to be told that.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, my real estate brain went directly to, well, that's one more thing in a home inspection we're going to all have to deal with, just when we thought it couldn't get crazier. So that Luann's story wins. That's all I
So,
got.
do you remember the first time you and I we went to a restaurant and we had crabs, and the waiter thought he had to tell us not to eat the green stuff?
Oh, I know. It's so gross.
It's like, remember that?
Somebody's crab shack. I remember
But
that.
it is pretty funny. There has to be, when you're, just the things that people say.
Like, I was going to go right to the green stuff.
Like, no,
Had
no.
he not said that.
Exactly. And then I was going to go out basically and try to find a red wasp to ride around on like a dragon.
Seriously. I know.
I don't actually have any wacky news this week. I was too busy.
Yeah. Well, the potential of finding life on Venus was kind of a
That
story
was
that was
cool.
missed by everybody.
Talk about it.
I think
didn't
it was
read-
Venus. I'm pretty sure
It was Venus,
Okay.
yeah.
So, yeah, they found basically some kind of element or molecule. It's
Oh,
been
no,
about
you're
a
not
week
remembering.
that could only be the result of an organic byproduct. Or an
Okay, but she's
organism.
forgetting the funny part. So didn't one of the scientific things you and I sent back and forth said the only type of essentially butane or gas that exact
Yeah, from penguin guano.
from penguin poop, right?
First of all, how do people know that?
Exact. Well, no.
Who studies that?
To break down all the things that just went into what I just said from that article. So here we are sitting on planet Earth, and there's some scientist that discovers on Venus some sort of gas or something, and then he has an instrument that then can break down the molecular structure of the gas. Okay, I'm not done.
Yeah.
So that's a hell of a
That's
thing,
a
right?
thing, yeah.
Yeah, I don't. That's a really interesting telescope filter. Is all I'm saying,
Absolutely.
right? Okay, then from the exact formula, he had some sort of software program that compared it to all the other, flatulent byproducts. Okay, that it might
gases,
be
I guess,
emitting
in a
from.
broad sense. What it could be.
Okay, I'm not
Yeah.
done. I'm not
Okay.
done.
Yeah.
And at some point, somebody had got up to some poor pelican who was trying to have a penguin who
They're slower.
Yeah, penguin who was trying to have a little, private time.
Yeah.
And kept some of his stuff for scientific study. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah.
But just think of all the people that had to have been involved in the ability for
Tangled web.
some scientists to be able to determine that the gas was similar, if not the same, that comes from a butt of a penguin.
I know. What a story, right? But scientifically, and I'm, very much armchairing scientificing here.
That's a lot of free
I
time
know.
to research that.
Indeed. But they said that it could only be produced by something organic, and it, even if it kind of decays over time, it regenerates itself. So something is continuously producing this.
It's life.
It's life,
Of some
okay?
form.
And so my other thought was, only in 2020 can that story not really feel any love. It just slid right past underneath all the other 2020 nonsense.
Well, just as the lunacy, too. If you remember Julian Assange back from 2006 or 2016, right?
Yes.
You know the whole thing? Well, he's been arrested and he's in England. He's on trial. Did you
No,
even
I
know
didn't
that?
know that.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly.
That's the story.
So Julian Assange, you guys should research him yourself, the whole WikiLeaks guy. Here we are, essentially, one of the biggest hypothetical, regardless of what side of that conversation you're on, but should have been one of the biggest news stories ever. I mean, here's this guy that essentially was able to, through his WikiLeaks online newspaper, have all these people leak to him this information that sort of showed the government's overreach in so many different ways globally, and just all this other crazy stuff. Things that were maybe, I guess this trial ferreted out, maybe, whether these things were illegal, so just look, guys, this is the ultimate Tom Clancy novel is what I'm saying, right? I mean, this is Tom Clancy meets Jason Bourne, and James Bond just didn't even qualify to show up to this one.
Yeah,
okay, that's what I'm
it's very
saying.
intriguing
And yet nobody's talking about it.
Nope.
Not even a word of it. So yeah, and we're not talking about potential life on planet Venus.
It's just baffling.
Yeah.
I don't know. Very 2020.
Yeah, politicized. Everything's politicized. That's the reason. Everybody's because look, if I'm telling you about the potential life on Venus, there's no angle for me other than just disseminating information.
Yeah.
I can't get you to think my way. So there's no
political angle to it.
There's no
It's just a
potential.
fact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's
Facts
not news.
don't get much press.
Right. So it's not news. So unless you can spin it to side with your perspective or the newspaper that you're publicizing for, then it ain't going to get said.
No.
That's what's
amazing.
happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
So everything basically has a political bent to it.
I know. Whether it's, the wildfires and hurricanes and, whatever else is going on, somebody's got an angle on it.
Well,
on both sides.
I actually read an article about, these fires that are happening out west. They've been happening out west for a long time. But the question then becomes, why is it that these fires have gotten so intense and so common? Mm-hmm. And they say global warming, or they say just all these different things. And wasn't there some sort of gender... what the hell was that?
Oh, it was caused by a gender reveal party.
Yeah.
Fireworks that they shot.
Fireworks.
Off.
Well,
Yeah.
no, that's what they're saying.
That's what they're saying. I have not fact checked that.
So I read something that was very interesting, and the article in essence was saying that the fires are almost always starting because of the actual grid itself being, most of it in California, from the 1920s. So the grid itself was built as part of one of the big work projects to pull the country out of the Depression. And so out in California, I'm sure this is true with most of the country, you have these power poles, and I don't know anything about any of this, but in those big, barrel things that are at the top, and all the electrical componentry that, connects one pole to the next. Well, evidently, a vast majority of those have never been updated since the 20s, and those things are literally igniting. And the power stations are not, the companies, the trees have grown up around them, and then you have, obviously kindling to the left, kindling to the right, and then these old, antiquated, way outdated things that are never even designed to last that long. Of course they're way past their prime, and they're causing a lot of these fires. Well, but that's the interesting thing. Mm-hmm. So then this article then is talking about, well, why is that true? Why isn't in California in particular the grid been updated? And the reason was, and this guy obviously had an angle based on what I'm about to tell you, but still interesting nonetheless, is a lot of the power companies were essentially politically coerced to stop investing in the grid, the infrastructure, and start putting it all towards green energy, solar, wind. And so the point of the article was that these companies essentially, which are in some cases publicly traded, but in no way not socialized, they're essentially run by the local governments and the state government. And then a lot of these companies, if had up to their, they would choose to spend their money on things that would keep their existing infrastructure sound. But politically, they're essentially having to follow the strongest winds that are telling them to build solar and build wind. Now, I'll tell you where. I kept on reading about this, and I'll tell you, listeners, why I was reading about this, because I was looking actually into it. Julie and I were thinking about investing into a company, and so that's what got me going on this path. But then I started thinking. So assuming, because I was thinking, okay, that's kind of an interesting angle. Then I got to think, so what's the probability of people being off the grid? Like, it's really freaking expensive.
It is. And there's some hassle involved.
Yeah, and it's not like, I mean, you guys want to hear how dumb we are? So here's how dumb we are. I'm looking at it right now. So, we replaced our hot water tank in our villa in Puerto Rico. It was, like you'd picture a hot water tank in a closet, right? And we replaced it with, this is a great idea, a 600-gallon, which is massive, solar hot water tank. Oh, that sounds wonderful. You don't have to heat it. No, gas needs to heat it. No electric needs to heat it. Our energy bill will go down. Well, here's the downside. If it's cloudy out for a day, you don't have hot water.
No hot water, which affects not only your shower, but the whole family's shower and the dishwasher and your washing machine.
Dishwashers don't work if the water's not a certain
hot water for
temperature.
you. No, it's basically, almost like not having water. It's just you have all cold.
But anyway, so I was thinking about the whole grid thing. And I was thinking, well, let's set aside cost for a second.
Okay.
Where would it make sense not to basically be off the grid? Where would there be so, like, everyone should have their own backup generator. Everyone should have their own backup cistern. And there's shortcomings with all of it, but everyone should have their own backup, every source of energy. And if you're in a place where you can use solar or wind, and maybe you do back it up with like a diesel generator, why the hell wouldn't you?
I don't know.
Honestly.
Other than the cost, I don't.
Yeah, and internet, for example, which is not really a utility, but effectively it is your internet provider. But that whole industry is going to be completely rocked when 5G goes online. But not only that, the mini satellites that Elon Musk has secretly been shepherding up into low atmosphere, that's going to net the whole world to make it so that internet is free and we bounce off satellites, which is a lot faster than virtually everything else. Well, if you're going to have essentially, it gets to the point where you can have a home that's completely offline. Because you don't need a cable company.
Makes sense.
You wouldn't need a cable company.
No.
You wouldn't need, the gas company. You wouldn't need the water company. Well, so then where does that leave opportunities going forward? And I think the answer is the stuff's too expensive. I mean, just the stupid.
Well, remember what a flat screen TV used to cost.
Yeah. Well, but it's a long ways off.
Yeah. We'll need some engineering.
Yeah.
Still.
So when these people are talking about having things go green and all that and green energy, what they're talking about from a state perspective makes sense because they want to try to maybe, in Texas, for example, where we used to live, right outside Georgetown, it was the largest solar panel array anywhere, I think, in the United States. And if I remember correctly, Georgetown had actually gotten itself completely off.
Yes, it was one of the leading towns of that.
Right, to provide electric just from, so that's the way it would have to be institutionalized.
But ultimately, don't you think it would cost cities less? Because they wouldn't be repairing all this old crap all the time? I wonder.
Probably.
Long term.
Well, not to mention the fact that essentially pulling the dinosaur juices and whatnot out of the earth is getting more and more expensive. And, if you can replace all that stuff with alternative energy, but the intervening, like how do you go from here to there?
It's the transition. It's like a transitioning market.
It's too expensive. Part. Right.
Yeah.
So like our stupid generator was what, $20,000? I mean, that was ridiculous. And then you go through all the other lists.
Then you have to keep the maintenance of it, of course.
Right. And you go through all the lists of the things that you would take to take your house offline. You would have to be, at this point, in order to do it, we had to do it just because we were living in a place with a very, the grid here. Electric goes off here on a perfect day just for no particular reason for like 20 minutes just because.
Not even windy.
Not even windy. It'll just, I'm going to take a siesta.
Yeah. It's just fragile,
Yeah. And so so we have to basically have backups to everything here. So we're kind of getting used to it. But yeah, I don't think these arguments, politicized arguments about making everything green, there's too many people that wouldn't be able to afford the expense of doing all of that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but it is fascinating though, I think, honestly.
There's something in my mind when I wonder whether the home warranty companies are covering solar and things like that now.
They're not. They
I don't
exclude
think
it.
so.
And matter of fact,
Because it's too expensive, probably.
and most of your home insurance too. If you have solar panels or any of this other stuff, you have to. They sometimes won't cover. You have to spend a lot of extra money for a rider. Mm-hmm. So anyway,
Interesting stuff.
Yeah, not that interesting, but interesting.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, it's kind of nice to have a non-radical week this year. Interesting stuff, but.
Oh, you mean our defragging? Our defragging isn't violent this week.
Exactly.
Well, what are you looking forward to for next week?
Let's see. Well, I have to remind ourselves that considering it's 90 degrees and tropical here, that we're about to get into fourth quarter, and that everyone has so much momentum, and it's an interesting combination because normally this time of year, seeing fourth quarter come and holiday stuff, people kind of naturally wind down. The market usually winds down a little bit and then ramps back up for the spring. I don't see that this year. I see people doing all of their normal fourth quarter stuff and keeping serious momentum. I read a Housing Wire article that was talking about in the beginning of the pandemic, there were no new licensed agents. And now it's like fast and furious because of the effect of furloughs and unemployment and all that.
You're just seeing what we're seeing are the ramifications of essentially not making it so that effectively it's like when a car manufacturer will start doing zero finance, and what they're doing is they're selling more cars, but they know that they're selling cars they would have sold 90 to 120 days in the future, right?
It's like that kind of market.
Right, so all you're doing is you're taking, and normally when you put something on sale, you're just taking future sales and you're putting it today, which means that you're going to be hurting in the future when you wish you would have that sale. Mm-hmm. So the exact opposite's happening in real estate. You have the sales that would have happened. Actually, there's no one answer to it, but effectively it's all these people that would have chosen to purchase that are now wanting to purchase. But here's the reason that example doesn't really match up is because you still have in many markets, you still have constrained inventory.
Very constrained.
And you have
getting worse for some of them.
Yeah, and then you have all these things. So you have all these amazing competing things happening simultaneously that. You have these ridiculously low interest rates. I mean that in the best of ways. You have constrained inventory because there's not enough move up for the people to move up to.
Yeah.
Right? So they're not putting their houses for sale. You have the biggest sort of demographic shifts happening in the history of the United States at the very least. We're experiencing another baby boom, which no one's talking about, but it's going to pick up with intensity.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a lot more, all the things are going
Demand is going to continue.
Right. Demand is going to continue. You're going to see probably U.S. population start to dramatically increase just because of the generational shifts and all these things are happening. So if you look at the United States as a whole as sort of like if you're looking at it as a business, there's absolutely no reason to bet against the United States going forward, especially as it pertains to housing. Every single possible wind is at your back right now for next year to be a fantastic year. But that's not universally true, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, there'll be a lot of agents and there'll be a lot of markets where they're not experiencing that. I'm thinking about our clients in Manhattan. Where there's,
definitely.
There's supposed to be at least 13,000 or 15,000 vacant apartments in Manhattan,
which is a record. Yeah.
An apartment, guys, just to remind you guys, apartment isn't just how you think of it. Apartment's also a condo or a co-op.
You can in Manhattan they call it an apartment, but it's still ownership.
Yeah.
It's not renting.
Right. So when we say there's that many vacant units, a large number of those are unsold, homes, not apartments. Not that an apartment isn't a home, but you get the idea. And then you have all the new inventory that's coming for sale. So if you're selling in that market, you obviously you've been in that market now for 3 years. You're going to experience probably a lot more downside before you see any upside.
Yeah, for sure.
What that market's in the cycle of not wanting to catch a falling knife.
That's true, but to our Manhattan listeners, and we really feel for you and understand what you're going through. Things do still sell in any market. We had to remind our members during the recession where there was a lot of the housing recession where there was a ton of inventory. You remember when people used to do foreclosure tour buses just to see because it took all day to see the inventory?
Yep.
But still, and we would remind you guys then, look at the solds. Stuff's still happening, right? It might be to a different crowd.
You're saying it right. So she said two really important things. You guys listen. So like if you're selling in Miami, where that's another huge buyer's market in the condo, apartment space, and you're looking at a particular building and you're seeing that the inventory is measured in years, not even months, and you're seeing multiple listings and you're seeing essentially prices stall out. what's going to happen next in that marketplace is you're going to see one person, then 10 people just drop their price. And then you're going to see that building completely reset in price. But then what's going to happen is that building will start looking like a value compared to its competition. And then those units will start selling until that's how the market actually has to resettle. But in a market like this, where people don't have foreclosures and they don't have to worry about, and frankly, in a lot of cases, the payments are so low, maybe they could VRBO them. Who knows? There's lots of extends and pretend ways to keep a house that you can't afford, that have become institutionalized. So is there going to be a precipitous drop in pricing, even in markets that are oversaturated with inventory, like Miami, like New York City? Maybe not. It's hard to know. There's been lots of examples where there's been essentially a strong buyer's market, and it's the market, the way it reacts is predictable. It's what I just laid out for you guys. But in this market, where you've got all these things that could sort of cloud out the normal behavior, who knows what the hell is going to happen next year as far as inventory. But what is going to happen is you're just going to have to, as Julie said, get into the MLS, go to the MLS, look to see what's actually sold. So before you start convincing yourself that nothing's selling, here's the thing you got to realize. Nothing might be selling that you're used to selling, or nothing might not be selling in the neighborhood in which you live, or virtually not selling, or in the community in which you're familiar with. We experienced that when we were selling real estate. Markets change all the time, guys.
Well, so I want to stop you there for a second, because for our real estate listeners, in coaching we call that what's hot and what's not. When you feel like nothing's selling for you, or maybe it's your inventory, maybe it's your zip code. Remember, when you do your hot sheets, don't just look in what you're familiar with, what you think, what you grew up on. Things change. There's shifts. You've got to know what's hot and what's not. And sometimes there's just a trend that's for a little while. Maybe there's a hot new subdivision, new construction, and when it sells out, maybe nothing replaces it immediately. Maybe people go across town. What's going on with that, especially now that people are less inclined to be really school district dependent if they're using virtual homeschool. There's a lot of changes. So you should be doing what's hot and what's not at least weekly, but do it for your overall market. And also, your metropolitan area, not just where you like.
And guys, understand too, some of the trends that are taking place in real estate, they're not short term. These are going to last decades. Some of the things that you're saying about migration into people moving out of the cities, and people sort of having the end of it with we have coaching clients in Oregon, and the areas that have been seeing the really bad political unrest, and these people were born there, raised there, just love it, and they're leaving. And so that's not going to be, once a lot of people hate moving in the first place, they're not freaks like Julie and I. And so when they move, they're not moving back. And that's what you're going to, so you're seeing some of these big macro trends happening because of a lot of the social things. But I think the biggest macro trend thing that you're seeing are people moving out of the cities. Again, not primarily for political reasons, but just because lifestyle. They just don't want to live in that lifestyle anymore. It's not worth it. The overall combined cost of living in some of these mega cities is not worth it in terms of the life energy you have to put into living there. And those are decisions that people are making. And that's the kind of, the bizarre blessing that I think, Corona-19, whatever the hell it's called.
Yeah.
That's the bizarre blessing it gave to so many people, because it forced people really to sort of take a step back, unplug from sort of the, ritualized, repetitive lifestyles that maybe they've been leading for generations, right? They're just doing what their parents did to their parents. And now they're forced to have 3 or 4 months off where they're forced to reset. And then they're saying, how about that? Life still went on. How about that? My kid can do this, or I can, work virtually. And, then the onion starts coming unraveled, and they start realizing, I don't have to have 2 cars. Maybe we don't need to have 2 people working. Maybe we can. And then they hit up the realtor.com or the Zillow and they start searching, right. And they think to themselves, well, let's see. If I were to tell my boss that I'm not coming back to work unless I can be remote, which I've proven to him because of Corona-19 that I can work remotely just fine.
It's hard for a boss to say no to that.
Exactly.
Especially with the rules.
And then the boss gets enough people saying the same thing, and the boss says, you mean I can get rid of this lease? Mm-hmm. You mean I can get rid of this fixed cost? And then you have these massive companies that are starting to say, what was it? There's, I forget. The largest, Goldman Sachs, who based it, it's like, probably the biggest investment house of them all. Yeah. They're saying this remote work thing, this works for us. We might actually think about not having so many people come back to work. Anyway, you guys get the point. And the next thing sort of the rural and semi-rural, areas that people have just strictly seen as vacation properties now all of a sudden start being where people want to live. People don't want to wait. I've heard, read, seen people say, you know what, I was going to, I was, however old I was, 45, and I always told myself I was going to retire to a lake by some, whatever, pine forest when I was 65. And then this thing's caused me to realize that maybe I can do it now, and I figured out how to do it and make money and the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, you have the convergence of that plus the enticement of super outrageously low interest rates, and it makes it a lot easier for people to make decisions.
And if you're sitting back in Miami and you're where all the condos are and you're surrounded by all those vacancies, or in Manhattan or some of these other markets that are essentially going to suffer long-term trends of being buyers markets, and you're just telling yourself the market's going to come back if you just hold out, you better check yourself on that, because it might not be true. And I know that's kind of harsh what I just said, but staying with my example of Miami, who's to say you couldn't just go a little bit north or a little bit to the
that's why you play what's hot and what's not,
right,
so you'll know.
Expand outside of your little backyard, and you'll discover that, there are still the people that are selling, for example, in those downtown high-rise condos in Miami. You know what they're doing? They're buying these little houses that were built in the 20s, 30s, and 40s with private yards.
It's like the reverse condo thing,
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And so these are the things you got to pay attention to. So if you're not experiencing a fantastic market, chances are there's a fantastic market happening near you, and you just need to learn to be a little bit more versatile, and then remember, go into that market with your mindset being a listing agent, and you're not going to have really you won't have too many problems making migrations and business moves like that. The time to do it is definitely now, because just, again, when it comes to housing trends aren't like, you could see all kinds of trends and everything in life. I don't even have to give you guys examples. But housing trends, they last generations. A housing trend can last like 100 years. So when you see these housing trends, they start to see like they're going to not shift back, then you better take it seriously, or you're going to have to, you're going to be suffering needlessly as you're trying to wait around for your ship to come back in. So hopefully that makes sense to all of you.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to say?
That's all I got.
That's all you got?
We're failing at resort right now. We need to.
That's what Julie says when we work too much. She said we're failing at resort. That's true.
We are. I just set an example for other people.
Yeah, we are. We are failing at resort. Well, I mean, there it is. So guys, listen, have a fantastic day. If you're not yet in the free coaching program, if you're listening to us for the first time, a couple ways you can connect with us. Obviously, listen to the podcast every day, subscribe, buy our book. It's for sale everywhere. It's called Harris Rules. Do seriously consider joining the free coaching program. And to join the free coaching program, just text the word survival to 31996. Text the word survival to 31996. And most of you guys who have been with us for a long time, you are having your best years ever. And those of you who are just discovering us for the first time, most of you waste too much time trying to decide what direction you want to go. The simplest answer is the one that your intuition tells you is the truth. And I'll give you a way to decipher that. The simplest answer is almost always the correct answer. So if the simplest answer is to learn skills and to basically be of service to other people so then you can earn the right to do business with them, don't fight with that. Don't overly complicate it and think you have to start making TikTok videos. That's not how life really works. That's not how you make decisions and not how anybody makes decisions. And it's clear that people are not going to start, hey, Julie, we need to hire a realtor. Let's go on TikTok and see who does the best dance moves.
Yeah, that'll be the day.
No, okay, we have to hire a dog groomer. Maybe we can check them out on TikTok.
No.
And yet, there was an article on, I'll even say it, on Inman. I didn't tell you about this.
No.
And it was, so TikTok got killed this weekend.
Yep.
So there can't be any new subscribers to TikTok, which will be the end of TikTok.
Yeah.
Because it turns out the Chinese basically were, in control of all the videos that all these people were uploading with TikTok, and God knows what they were doing with all that data, but there you go. So TikTok got, clocked.
Yeah.
Okay. And Inman put this article up, like 10 best TikTok videos, realtor TikTok videos or something, like some sort of eulogy for TikTok. No, I did. So I watched. Yeah. They're not long. So I watched like 3 of them.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what the hell I was watching, honestly. I mean, there was the first 2, or maybe it was, I don't remember. I remember an attractive millennial doing a dance, and she said her name was Sally Sue Realtor or something. Okay, I guess that's a real estate video. The next one was, I don't even remember. My brain has thankfully blocked it out. And the next one was a guy standing in front of Kevin, who's the guy from Flashdance?
Oh, you asked me too quick.
Yeah.
Everybody knows.
Yeah. Well, you gonna sing the song for us so they can remember?
No. Nice try.
Well, that guy, right?
Kevin Bacon.
Kevin Bacon, yeah. So the guy's standing on a street corner with his probably iPhone pointing at Kevin Bacon's building in Manhattan, and that constitutes a real estate TikTok video.
Ugh.
I'm not criticizing any of them. All I'm criticizing is the people that told you that that's
Right.
actually doing work.
It's not their fault, because why would they believe that that wasn't true? What basis of comparison?
Yeah, because most of them got into real estate. They didn't know what the hell they were doing.
And they know they're supposed to use technology, and maybe this will be the thing.
And they stumbled across somebody that told them a bunch of hooey about basically how to generate business.
Which looks like a lot more fun.
And then certainly what we tell them to do. and then they just didn't have the business sense to filter whether they were getting sold a, as your dad would say, a sack of hooey.
Yep.
And then the next thing you know, they're making TikTok videos.
I don't know. It's twisted, isn't it? It's a twisted path. But, the thing that makes me mad about that, not just TikTok, but a lot of the other things that, if you do this, the world will rain leads on you.
Because it's a lie.
Impressions or whatever, is that when the agents call to complain that, I've had this thing for 6 months and I spent this much money and this much effort, I'm not seeing the leads. And what are they always told? Well, you haven't done it long enough.
Okay,
and you've had 5,000 impressions, which are supposed to be worth something.
Since you brought that up, I'm going to tell a story, but I'm not going to use any names. So I'm going to describe the product, okay?
Yep.
So this was about 4 or 5 years ago. The big trend was predictive mailing.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
exactly
you know what I'm talking about, right?
I do.
And so those of you guys who were
That was a thing.
You guys have not been in business for a while. Here's what it was. And this is exactly, and I'm not making this up. Okay, so there's all these, it was a headline story of Inman. Everyone was talking about it. Venture funds were getting into the business, and they're saying, and throwing, I think even NARS, National Association of Realtors, has a hedge fund, and they even threw money after one of these. Mm-hmm. And it was a big deal. And Julie and I were working a lot with NARS Venture Fund, and we would feature some of their products or their investments on the podcast, ones that were interesting to me, frankly. And I would, especially if there's something new or something in alignment with our global, our worldview on real estate. And one of them came on, and here's was the gist of it. And again, I'm not going to say the name, but the gist of it is you're going to subscribe to a specific geographic area. They're then going to use their fancy algorithms, and they're then going to tell you which people in that particular geographic area are most likely to move. And then they're going to make you postcards, and they're going to mail them out in the anticipation that this person's going to be calling you because somehow you had a crystal ball and knew they were thinking about moving based on some sort of fancy algorithm. Okay. Right? You guys listening to me on all this?
Just to clarify, and the algorithm was it was a combination of things like how long they had owned their house,
right? Mortgage balance,
if they had refinanced it,
their age,
how old they are,
right.
If their kids are out of the house or not. So, sounds nice and analytical.
Yeah, you could throw a whole bunch of data points in there and
Sounds
come up with a predictive, and artificial intelligence, whatever. I mean, that was the big story, right? So everyone was talking about, holy crap, I need to get my geographic area locked in so I can be picking the apples off the fruit tree even before they know they're apples. That was the whole sales pitch. And it was not inexpensive. It was pretty damn expensive. And so I remember listening to this, and I thought two things, and I read about it. And then there was other companies that came up doing the same thing. I thought to myself, if you're inclined to do mailing in the first place, if that's your thing, why wouldn't you just, opposed to paying these guys for their fancy algorithm and their overpriced mailing, why wouldn't you just, if this was your inclination, why wouldn't you just geographic farm that same exact area and not only catch the people that were most inclined to want to move, but also catch the people that just discovered today that they need to move, that their algorithm didn't actually catch. And that's if you actually were inclined to waste money doing direct mail, which we do not suggest that you do at all, ever.
There is no crystal ball saying, okay, I'm going to hover it over this neighborhood. I've got my map out. And that house right there, they're going to sell next.
Well, but if you guys want to,
people wanted to believe that,
right? And so so here's my secondary thought on that. So if let's say you choose an area of 1,000 homes, let's say, and again, we're not suggesting you do a geographic farm, but if you want to know the people, okay, hold on, I'm going to give you guys an unbelievably complicated formula to know exactly what sellers in your area are looking to sell immediately. I'm going to tell you exactly how to find them. You guys paying attention? Are you now seriously? Can I give this formula away?
I don't know.
This is the secret sauce. This is the KFC secret formula meets real Coke.
Ooh, that's good. I like that.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
It's lunchtime.
Yeah, you're hungry.
Okay, so call the expireds. Call the for sale by owners. Call the notice defaults. Call the Liz Pens. Call the
Actually, call your lead follow-up when they left you a message.
Call the what's the probate?
Yeah.
Okay.
For rent by owners.
Call for rent by owners. Call the property. Yes, exactly. All that. If you're in a vacation resort area, call the VRBOs. Holy crap! What? Yes. What I'm telling you is all the best sources of seller leads are out there with their hands up right now. With their hands up in the air, saying, "I want to sell now." So, the fallacy of the whole business idea of this predictive mailer thing could have only been created by somebody with no real estate background. Check. Could have only been sold to salespeople with no real way of filtering good ideas from bad. Check.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. And this company, and there's others just like it, raised a bunch of money, and of course they all went out of business. Yeah. Because what eventually happens is that agents stop paying the bill because they realize they're not getting any business from it. So that little flash in the pan idea lasted, I think, 3 to 5 years. And guys, that's the thing. If you don't have enough time in business perspective, thank you, you're not going to realize how many of these things that you guys think because somebody, a series of people or a mob of people convinced you as to what you're supposed to be doing. You guys won't have the business sense, frankly, or the perspective, to put it nicer, to know that you're being lied to. You're being fooled into buying something that's silly. I'm sure there are agents out there listening right now that have invested an ungodly amount of time learning to dance for the sake of building a big TikTok following, right?
Absolutely.
And they were probably listening to, somebody tell them a fairy tale about how you have to basically build this big mountain of media, and somehow magically that's going to, persuade people to want to do business with you. I'm sure that there are people who are on the other end of that rainbow, and they're realizing now that, frankly, TikTok is no longer going to be around, as an example, that they were probably lied to. Yeah. But I wonder how many of them are actually going to have the guts to admit it, and then they actually have the guts to make course direction and do something different. I wonder.
Well, it takes a lot to admit it, and when you want to believe that something's going to work so badly because your logical brain says, okay, maybe that's cool, or even if you're not thinking logically, but you're doing it because your friend's doing it, because you're supposed to do some kind of media and you don't know what else to do. Well, that's just lack of business maturity and perspective. That's not your fault. You'll get that over time, but don't torture yourself by signing up for the next 6 months of something that you spent too much money on that doesn't work.
And the world's full of that stuff, guys, and it always will be.
The people that sell it are pretty convincing, too, some of them.
Well, they're not. Most times they're just basically marketers. And what they're trying to do is create some sort of whiz-bang product on the back of agents, because they know agents, for the most part, are not that discerning.
Right.
And will buy anything.
And they want to believe.
And they want to believe. And they're opportunity seekers. And they don't want to actually have to be put in a position where they're going to have to do what they don't want to do, and they don't want to do it at the highest level. So you have sort of a perfect storm for being able to sell gimmicky marketing ideas, true or false.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and what a lot of these guys do is they want to seed the company idea and sort of test it inside real estate, again, because you guys will buy just about anything that, facilitates being, in essence, being professionally lazy and not having a skills-based business, okay, and doing things that are proactive versus passive. Sorry if I'm offending you, just keep your mind open, okay? The moral of the story is that's the reason so many of these companies are in this industry, because they know you guys will buy pretty much anything. Then they sort of perfect it, and then they start selling it to dentists or just any kind of other industry. They'll start selling it to people with car washes. So if they come up with a specific algorithm or some specific marketing widget, then they take that widget after they sort of honed it in real estate, and then they go to a different industry. And that's what you see constantly. And a lot of these guru types, they do the same thing. So a lot of the people that are in the real estate industry that are pretending to be gurus or experts, they actually came from other industries, and they came to real estate because it was an extension of what they were already doing. And that's what a lot of these social media guys are doing. They started in I'll use Gary Vaynerchuk, for example. Again, not criticizing, just giving you a true story. He started out basically by essentially selling wine online. His parents' business extended it, and he obviously did a great job of it. Then Gary extended. He created media company that is a very successful media company that focuses on helping other businesses then basically start doing social media, and with the idea that obviously that's something that businesses should be focusing on. And really, most businesses, guys, they don't really have a choice. They have to be focused in social, because a lot of businesses, that is where the noise is. It's on social. It used to be on the 3 big, TV stations and other sources like that. But now, if you're a business, a normal business, and I do say normal, that real estate is not normal, and I'll explain why in a second. If you want customers, you have to be hyper aware of what's going on. Here's the reason it's not true for real estate. It's not true for real estate because we can go directly after our business. We can be proactive. We can go proactively after the exact people that we want to target. That'd be the sellers. You can't do that in any other business. Think about it, guys. If you were, say, for example, a dry cleaner, and you opened up a dry cleaning business or whatever, and you wanted to expand your business, how are you going to do it? I mean, you could hypothetically call people up or go door to door and say, do you have any dry cleaning? You got something you need clean? You could do that hypothetically. But what most of them do is they're relying on passive means to get their business, to get people to walk in their business. You guys don't have a storefront. Your storefront is the for sale sign that's in the house you have listed. That's your storefront. Your storefront is when, people call you and they ask for information about your listings or information you have that they, put value on. That's your storefront. But normal businesses, the ones that frankly are suffering the most from COVID, they don't have the ability just to go out there and have that same flexibility that real estate provides. Honestly, think about this, guys. If you opened up a business, any business nowadays, after you get the rigmarole, stores open, you're ready to have opening launch, everything's ready to go. Even if it was an online business, you have to have inventory, right? Unless you're drop shipping, you have to have inventory. Well, if you're going to have inventory and you're going to have a retail store, that means you have to buy the inventory. And it means you're dealing now with complexity of whether what you purchase is going to sell, the pricing of it, the discounting of it, the theft of it, all those types of things. In real estate, you can get into business and you can go out there and get your inventory, which normally costs you money, for free. That's in the form of sellers' listings. And then you basically can put a sign in their front yard for free. That was, frankly, if you could sell a sign space in your own front yard to a local business, how much do you think that would be worth? A lot. If you could put up a sign in your front yard right now advertising, say that local dry cleaner, what would that guy pay you for that right to basically advertise if that were legal? Thousands of dollars, right? And yet you guys can do that for free. And then to expand your business, you don't have to spend money to expand your business if you're focused on building your business the way we coach you guys to. You can just go out there and pick up the phone and call the people that already have their hands in their air. Unlike, if you're wanting to open a dry cleaner and you have to go door to door asking for dirty clothes. With real estate, there's actual lists of people that have their hands in their air that say, yes, I want to sell my house now. You guys see all the reasons this is such a beautiful, beautiful business. And yet 85% of you will fail within 24 months. Can you explain that, Julie?
I mean, the only way I can explain that is that they'll sell a couple houses to their friends and they'll think they've got it going on, and eventually after the third deal it dries up, and now you're faced with, what do I do? If they make it that long.
So yes, everything you just said, and it's because people, and I used to think it's a combination of things.
Yeah.
The people that are in charge of real estate agents don't know this is reason one, don't know what to tell them to do because they never really learned it themselves.
Right.
So the people that are put in positionships of mentors and office managers and brokers, and they actually don't know how to actually go after business themselves. And that's the reason that most of them basically have businesses that are, past client centers of influence.
Yes.
And maybe they get referrals from Dave Ramsey. In other words, they have not really developed a business that's predictable and duplicatable. Their business is still...
It's not proactive.
It's hoping and praying.
It's subject to hopium.
Hopium, exactly. So they don't know themselves how to teach you to go out and get business because they've never learned it themselves. And the other aspect of all of it is that they know statistically that most of you will fail within 24 months. If you make it to, I think it's year 3, your probability of succeeding in long-term real estate goes through the roof. But the first 2 years is, sketchy. And I think statistically, most people, again, in leadership positions in real estate, know that most agents fail, and so they just don't even want to invest in those agents. I mean,
they figure you'll come and go.
So
some of it'll work, some of it won't.
Right. So they don't know what to say or how to say it, or maybe they do. They just don't want to invest in the agent.
Yes, I think I would agree with that.
Yeah, and it's kind of sad too. It makes me sad. Think about it.
Well, it's easy for them to be confused, and I think it's convoluted by all the other crap that's out there in their voicemail, email, text, people calling them, whatever. So how do you choose? And then I think that most people getting into real estate don't have a lot of business maturity. Not everybody. We've had some people come from the corporate world. We've got some pilots.
It's pretty rare that you have.
But that's the rare. That's the rare word. Most people have no way of telling what's a good
goofballs
decision.
like we were.
Absolutely. We didn't know what the hell we were doing.
No, hell no. I mean, when we got in the business, when we were early 20s, no one would have hired that. I mean, Julie literally was a part-time Christmas elf. I mean, we talked about that on the podcast last week. She would work at this year-round. She loved it, so she loved.
Awesome.
Yeah, but she'd work at this year-round Christmas store, And
A retail job,
a retail job, but she loved it. She didn't get anything. She didn't get paid anything. She'd come home every night covered with sparkles, which is pretty funny for a variety of reasons, And sometimes we'd go out for a pizza or whatever. This is in our early 20s when we could eat pizza without getting fat. And, occasionally people would look at her, and Julie thought, well, I just must look pretty because I have sparkles over. And I had to explain to her, Julie,
it's not normal in July.
There's only one profession where the girls walk around with sparkles when they're not at work,
Nice.
and it's called stripper. Mm-hmm. She hadn't realized that.
Didn't fly so much in Columbus.
No,
but
it didn't fly in Columbus. No. Yes. What were we just talking about?
Well, but we, and we had a car cleaning and detailing business together.
Yeah.
But
well, we went to college, but
we went to college. But as
who
far
cares?
as like
English.
Our version of this, and not to make us sound too old, but I remember within maybe 90 days or so of getting our licenses, our broker handed us this ginormous Remax catalog.
Yeah.
And he's like, pick some stuff out, guys. You need to get your logo together.
He didn't give
some stuff out.
Yeah, no, it didn't logo. He said business cards and crap, and it's like
signs and crap. And I remember sitting there overwhelmed just by that. And these guys have that like 100 times as bad with all the different ways it's coming at them.
Exactly. Well, but that you're getting to my point.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's back when like there were no coaches when we were in real estate.
No, you'd go shadow people.
Yeah, you go. Well, even then, that was pretty.
That was rare.
That was rare. So you just basically were throwing spitballs, to try to figure out what to do. And so what Julie and I did is our first year in the business, and this, as far as I know, is still a record for the nation. We sold over 100 houses, but the reason we did it is because hey, guess what? That seller is that FSBO right there has got a sign in the yard saying he wants to sell his house. And then chances are that guy also wants to buy a house. So if I go there and, I help him sell the house, chances are he's going to, use us to buy the house.
And we would have rockin' open houses and follow up on that.
Exactly. We'd jam the open houses and we'd focus on this little area in Beachwold. Yeah, and most of the houses we sold a lot of our own. We just worked. We did the job. We weren't following a roadmap, but we figured it out. It's interesting in our career. We didn't stay. That was our true north. And then there was a time when Julie and I got persuaded that we should be doing some stupid things like teams and passive marketing, whatnot. And we probably stayed that course for maybe a year and a half.
Yeah.
And then you and I finally figured out that they were all just basically those were just big elegant lies
and ego plays.
Yeah,
they weren't really generating more business. They just
we got sucked into that stuff.
Good.
We got sucked into that stuff from going to Howard Brinton stuff.
Yeah,
and there would be all those vendors there,
and
all these.
We love Howard.
Yeah, and Howard would have some big marketing guru on stage and talk to you about how you need to spend $25,000 on some big elaborate marketing campaign and all that.
Remember the Talking House?
Yeah, of course.
Lots of crazy things.
And then you'd say, well, that must be what I'm supposed to do. Otherwise, Howard wouldn't have him on stage. Well, God bless Howard, but Howard was getting paid to have that guy on stage. And we did not have the smarts to basically decipher that was Mickey Mouse. And, and that's how things are. That same exact pattern of behavior is happening to this day. Where you guys, people are lending you their, in some cases, unearned credibility about why they should be listened to, and then they're introducing you guys to somebody else that doesn't have your best interest in mind. And it turns out that person has no real estate background, had not been in business for more than 2 or 3 years, has no real successes from what they've been doing, but you guys buy it because you don't have the filters to run things through. And your conditioned response is to trust the elders in the pack, right? Which would be your office managers and your whoever else you stumble across. And you just think automatically that those people have your best interests in mind, where realistically, maybe they do, fundamentally, but what they're saying isn't. So they might think they have your best interest in mind, say that they have your best interest in mind, but for their own deficiencies or, negligence, they don't actually act as if they have your own best interest in mind. And thus you're out of the business in 24 months. That's what happens. And that's the never-ending cycle of failure in this industry, just simply because I think it's, people don't want to do what they don't want to do when they don't want to do it. But also, I think it's the people that should be telling them that, other than us, that if you want ever increasing long-term levels of success, you have to do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level. I mean, that is it. I think the people that know that don't live that themselves, so they're not going to say it. Or maybe there's 1% or 0.5% out there that know it, and then they say it, and they tell their agents that this is true. I know some of our own coaches that work in brokerages, this is how they, and they'll tell people the truth. But with such an huge, the noise out there telling agencies lies about doing things passively, the agents don't, the echo chamber is the message of, the true message that you and I and a handful of our, devotees are passing along the globe now. It's being drowned out by all the gimmicks, and you guys got, ultimately it's because you're not being discerning enough about who you're, what paths you're choosing to follow and who you're choosing to listen to. And that is, again, I think the reason why, 85% of all realtors fail within 24 months. I had the epiphany this past week. Most of these tech ideas and these gimmicks have come up since 2007 in essence. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to research this, but I think, and I'm pretty sure about this, I'm pretty sure that the failure rate for real estate the percent of agents failing has increased, and they're failing out within a shorter period of time.
Faster.
Do you understand?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they're more are failing faster. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that's true because I stumbled. I wrote that down. I started doing some homework on it, and I stumbled across the oldest statistic I found was from 1995. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that was NAR statistic, which is probably just tracking NAR members.
Sure.
But I bet you what I'm saying is right. I bet you more people are failing faster, and the reason is because the crap that they're thinking will get them and keep them in business isn't
and they're
working.
spending more on more crap because there's more crap
for
to
sure.
buy. As the years go by and as people, I've seen some of the referral-based companies, which sometimes are, have decent referrals that used to be sign up for free and you just pay a 25% referral fee. Now it's sign up for $2,500 with an ongoing fee and 35%. So, I think they're spending more faster because A, there's more to choose from, and B, because prices are going up on stuff.
Well, ultimately, it's because agents don't know how to choose. They
have no filter. Now, I will tell you, the one thing that's great in our coaching program is that, we do that coaching call every day, and I pretty much have all of our members trained to ask before they fork over their credit card. They'll say, You know what, I got this in, or they'll forward something. We get this all the time in our email. Sounds good. What do you think about it? Is this something worth doing? And probably 9 times out of 10, it's like, no, don't waste your money. You need to do this
I'll tell you
instead.
When Julie sends these to me, if she can't find the genealogy on this company or the idea, there's some people I'll ask, but generally speaking, all I've got to do is go to, I think it's called Who's It or whatever it is, and you can drop in a URL and you can see the date that the URL was formed, and you can see who it was formed by. And I'll tell you what I've seen, and this actually was it wasn't shocking. It was, I'll use the first word I was thinking, disgusting.
Yeah.
So back in March or April, there was a big surge in people trying to sell agents REO lists.
Yes, I remember this.
And agents to get on these exclusive lists, and it was all a bunch of bullshit. Mm-hmm. And I knew it was a bunch of bullshit because we work directly with these asset management companies, and I communicate with these guys 5 times a week. And we have people that, like Michelle McClintock, who's the #1 short sale agent in the country, and she's communicating with all these banks. And so trust me when I tell you guys, in all the BPO companies, we have the most and best highly trained canaries in coal mines that will early warn us about anything. So this email thing was going around. It was coming from 2 different sources, and it was trying to sell agents into fear of missing out and getting on lists. And it was so he was sending these lists through one company facade at this email, and then a couple days later he was sending another one. I'm sure he was sending it to people that didn't buy from the first company, and the second was just a fancy sales letter. Well, guess what? I went and researched the age of those URLs, and I found that the URLs that he was sending from were like months old, like 6-7 months old. Okay, that's necessarily a bad idea. And then I wanted to research to see who owned the URLs, and I found one he had under his name, and another he had under the corporation. And so then I researched the corporation. You can just drop all this crap into Google, and Google tells you everything. And then I found out exactly who it was, and it was a guy who back in 2007, 2008, 2009. Was notorious for selling these bullshit lists and essentially scamming agents.
We'll sign you up with all the asset managers. You don't have to do anything.
Exactly. And then he would disappear. And then it would creep back in another 6 months later.
Yeah.
And then he came and went. Hit and different company, different everything. Right. You couldn't figure out.
Same jib jab, different name.
Exactly. And he wouldn't use his own name either.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yep.
Yes.
And so that started to flare up again.
And the worst part about that was that agents, they meant well. They thought this was a good idea. It's an efficiency play, right? Somebody else signing you up for all of this potential REO work. Where's the accountability in that? How would you ever know if somebody signed you up? Total, complete BS.
Yeah, it was total and complete BS.
Yeah.
But again, why were agents liking it? Because they thought it would save them from having to do work of actually learning how to do it themselves and having to just everything. Mm-hmm. But in that particular idea was, that was obviously, that guy was straight up scamming. But then you have so many other things that are elegant scams where you just don't even know they're scams. Like I was just giving you the example of the predictive mailer thing, an elegant scam, right? Mm-hmm. And here, this guy had a big booth at the National Association of Realtors and the whole thing.
What do they always say? You can always tell what the lie is because there's more detail to it.
Yeah, well, exactly. Scam. Well, so again, if you're new in business or if you've never been in business, and you're constantly getting beaten over the head with all these competing messages, and you have all these people giving their social proof that this particular scammy idea actually isn't a scammy idea. Even, in some cases it sounds too good to be true, and your intuition tells you not to do it, and yet you still do it. Okay, and there's billions of dollars that are spent every year from agents and brokerages just chasing all these little gimmicky ideas. And what you guys got to get clear in your head is the ideas were never really designed to do anything other than separate you from your money. That's it. That's the absolute stone cold truth about 99% of that stuff.
Yes, and especially the worst ones where how would you ever know? You can't check. There's no accountability.
Right.
You call and they'll say, well, you just haven't waited long enough. When do you want to resubscribe? Or
Guys, we get solicitations like this from our own company too. I mean, we get people trying to sell us into scammy ideas. And it's the same exact learning process, that I've applied to helping you guys, that we apply to our coaching and training business. It's just shocking. There's this whole freaking industry out there of guys that basically consider themselves, social media experts, marketing gurus, and all they do is they go from one industry to another, trying to solve a problem that doesn't really exist, trying to separate small business owners from their money. I mean, that is what's happening right now, and I don't know how we even got on this.
I think you're right. It's like a different version of the same pitch. I got a weird email pitch yesterday that was just like no ramp up, nothing. It was, do you want a list of all registered nurses in your town? I'm like, well, who's selling me this, and why would I want that list, and what's this got to do with?
I'll tell you what the real problem with lists like that, if the lists were illegally obtained, and you mail the list, then
you're in trouble too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, by association.
Right. So there's all kinds of complications with that. But I mean, I
wish we didn't know all this in a way, because it's like just 101 ways that people go after agent money.
And not just agents, but everybody.
Everybody.
Right.
We're in that world, so we're more sensitive to it. But I am proud of our coaching clients that come back and they say, what is the deal with this? And occasionally they bring one to the call. And it's like, yeah, you know what? There's a lot of value there, and we have lots of examples of that working, and it's something that we coach. And in fact, we have a script for it. That's awesome for them.
That's so rare, though.
It's rare. There's some cases, like All the Leads would be one. They do a good job. The probate company.
Yeah, we have. What's the discount code we have for them if they wanted to look into that?
31996. All the Leads.
Oh yeah. Is it all? Was it that?
It's just All the Leads.
So text All the Leads to 31996. Text All the Leads. No spaces to 31996. I agree.
So that's a company proven. It works.
That's a company that provides probate information, which that's definitely a great source of business, and it's skills based. So I'll agree with you on that one. And then there's these companies that basically will help agents get expired information or for sale by
totally
information.
Legit. Yep.
Totally legit. I like IVR companies like 1-800-HOMEHOTLINE.com.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Totally legit.
Definitely.
Right. If you guys want to know what your filter should be as to whether or not what you're being sold is hooey, is just ask yourself if they're feeding into your desire to never do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level. In other words, are they trying to basically feed into your easy button? That isn't with all of us. All of us are looking for shortcuts. But is that the essence of their pitch to you? And if it is, you can pretty much be resting assured that if the answer is they will call you, you will get the leads passively, you won't have to do anything, low rejection, establish yourself as the expert so then people reach out to you just because they think you're all that type of stuff. That's all the easy button crap that you guys need to avoid. And those are the trends that come and go. But if you're in the industry right now and you're following the trends, and I was using the predictive mailer thing as an example. If you were just in real estate 5 years ago and you stumbled across that and you put all your your eggs in that basket and you spent all your money on that and you didn't get any results, chances are you're no longer in the business and you walked out of the industry with some debt. You guys learning? Are you paying attention to what we're saying? So ultimately, it's going to be up to you to decide what you want your future in real estate to be, if you even want a future in real estate. And anything and everything you want in life and in real estate does come back to always doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level. Yeah. So, I can't think of any other better way to end the show.
Nope.
Yeah, and we are sucking at resorting.
Yes, we need to.
We live at a resort,
better at that.
And we do spend too much time working.
Yeah.
But I kind of like the work most of the days.
It's good.
I like most of the work most of the days.
Just saying, there's other stuff like right behind us there.
Yeah, I know. We're going. All right. What do you want to do? You want to go to the beach?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Which beach?
I don't know. Well, we'll have to drive the cart to stop where it looks the best.
You going to go to Encanto?
That sounds great.
Are you going to go
The
to...
Munchkin would love that.
What's the other place? What's the...
Barlovento.
Barlovento?
It looked pretty rough today, though.
Yeah, that's true. High tides here. It's blowing up a bunch of algae.
Algae and big bamboo and
trees. I don't want to go to that restaurant. They're smelling what smells like the
yeah,
algae
you can't
rotting.
eat outside and eat and smell rotting seaweed at the same time.
No, that's not going to work. Yeah.
Maybe if you grew up here and aren't from Ohio, you wouldn't notice it. You know how like people in LA can drive like that and they don't know it's crazy?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing.
Yep. So I think we're going to the other place where it
Encanto.
doesn't stink.
That sounds good.
All right. So you're going to get the kids suited up?
Yep.
All right, let's do it. You guys have a fantastic day. We'll talk to you on the show tomorrow. If you need me for anything, text me at 512-758-0206, 512-758-0206. You guys have a fantastic day. We'll talk to you on the show anytime. Remember, the podcast is always there for you to listen to, available a billion different places. It's also available on our main website, timandjulieharris.com.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.